Everyone nowadays seems to be a trauma-informed care coach, a trauma-informed care practitioner, a trauma-informed care program, a trauma-informed care counselor, therapist. What does it actually mean to be trauma informed? That's what we're talking about on today's episode. Stay tuned. Hello, I'm Lisa Czak, founder of Worthy Woman Healing Podcast, Worthy Woman Healing Retreats, and Worthy Woman Healing Group. Today we are talking about trauma-informed care. What does it actually mean? Trauma-informed care is not just a buzzword. It is not just something you throw around claiming to be. It shows up in how you treat people. I deal with a lot of survivors of trafficking, exploitation, and abuse. However, trauma-informed care really means just treating how you treat people, how you show up in interactions. If you're a program or a nonprofit, it shows up in your policies, your procedures, your practices, the handbooks that you create. It is not a buzzword. So trauma-informed care means these three things: belief, not blame; differentiating, not generalizing; and building trust, not walls. Trauma-informed care is survivor-centered care. If it's not survivor-centered, it is not trauma-informed. If they're not bringing in the voices of the lived experience experts, aka survivors, it is not trauma-informed. And the very first thing that makes a coach, a therapist, a program, whatever they claim to be, is trauma-informed. The very foundation of a trauma-informed care practice is believing, not blaming the survivor. Did you get that? Belief, not blame. I'm going to read you a quote that I have here that other survivor leaders have shared with me. Okay. This is an example of a program that is not trauma-informed. And I quote, the survivor leader said, "I've heard staff in earshot of survivors question their stories. It's disheartening. None of them were survivor themselves." Another survivor shared with me that a staff member in a shelter she was in said this about her trafficker: "He only told you that to scare you." That's a quote. Countless survivors have shared that they have been asked this question. This is a common question when women come forward and tell their story about how they were abused, how they were exploited or trafficked. They get this question: why didn't you just leave? Why didn't you just leave? Maybe you've asked that question to someone. Maybe you've thought that. Maybe you heard my story or read my book, Portal Tears, and you thought, why didn't she just leave? Why didn't she just stop talking to him? Dismissing or questioning a survivor's experience invalidates their experience, invalidates them as a person, and this will shut them down. You have no idea the courage it takes to come forward and say, this is what happened to me, or this is what is happening to me. Because while you're being abused, trafficked, or exploited, you don't see it. That's a common thread among survivors. They didn't see it when they were in it. I didn't see it as trafficking. I didn't see it as exploitation. I didn't see it as abuse. I didn't see it as any of these things. Nobody wants to see themselves as a victim, see themselves as an abused woman, as a trafficked woman, as a woman who was exploited. So as trauma-informed leaders, we must model belief and trust. You're not going to get someone to trust you if you don't believe them. Okay. The second thing that makes a program or just you as a practitioner, a coach, or a therapist trauma informed, and I want you as people, women out there looking for trauma informed coaches, trauma informed therapists, programs to make sure you have these things in place, that the person that you're going to hire, that the program that you're going to enter has these things, that they believe, not blame. And the second thing is they differentiate, not generalize. Trafficking is not the Sounds of Freedom movie. I'm going to say it again and louder. Trafficking is not the Sounds of Freedom movie. That's not how it happens in the United States. In the United States, it's not a white van pulling you into it and taking you away. The new white van is the internet, actually. That's the new white van. That's how women and children are being groomed and exploited, is through the internet. In fact, I was just on Instagram yesterday. I went on Instagram Threads, which I've never been on. And I don't know why this showed up in my feed, but it was a younger woman. I would say she was a teenager, and she was dressed very scantily, and it was very sexual, her thing. And it was like, this is what I'm doing after school kind of thing. And I was like, no, no, no. I reported it because most likely she's being trafficked. Most likely a predator or trafficker has control of that account. It's not actually her account, and they are buying and selling her right there on Instagram. Okay. So it's not the Sounds of Freedom movie. Every survivor's story is different. Abuse doesn't look the same, because that's another thing you'll hear, right? Maybe a woman goes to her pastor and she says, this is what my husband's doing to me. Because she's probably not going to say, my husband's abusing me. That is not the language that women, while they are in abusive situations, being trafficked or exploited or abused, they're not going to use those terms because they don't identify with those terms because of all of the myths that are out there about what abuse looks like. And many pastors, and I've heard this many times from women, will say, well, did he hit you? It's like that's the only form of abuse that they think of in their head. Or a woman might say, I don't feel safe with my husband. And the pastor, this has happened. This is not me making this up. This is true. Many, many women have told me this, that pastors tell them then, you need to stop using the word safe, because when you say safe, one woman gave this example exactly. When you say safe, not safe, I think you mean like you're in an alley in Jamaica and about to get mugged and raped and killed. This woman is trying to share with her pastor, my husband's not safe, and this is his response. That is not a trauma-informed pastor. That is not a trauma-informed church, which is why churches need trainings on this so they know when a woman comes. And really, all abuse is physical abuse, because your brain doesn't know the difference between emotional, physical, spiritual, financial. Your brain doesn't know the difference between that kind of abuse. Your brain perceives it as pain. So really, all abuse is physical, because that's how your brain's not saying, oh, this isn't really abuse. This isn't pain because I'm not getting hit. Those pain receptors, they've done studies where the pain receptors fire off during all forms of abuse. Not because your brain perceives it as pain, which is why it hurts, which is why the silent treatment hurts, which is why emotional, spiritual abuse hurts. Anyway, I'm getting off track on this, but this really is all part of being trauma informed. So that's a red flag. If you're going to your pastor or maybe a Christian counselor, they do this all the time. They will say things like, well, what do you mean you're not safe? Is he hitting you? Is he harming you? No, they're not getting it. So not every survivor's experience is the same. Here's another quote from one of my survivor leaders. No more one-size-fits-all care. We need individualized support, not a cookie-cutter approach. Some things we've gone through are so unbelievable, even we were in denial at times. That's what I was just talking about. How you don't see abuse as abuse while you're in it. You don't see trafficking and exploitation as such when you're in it. Or like another survivor's mom told her, that only happens in the movies. And that survivor went on to say, but Mom, I lived it. It's not the Hollywood version. So a true trauma-informed approach has the knowledge and understanding that every survivor's story is going to look different, sound different, be different. Just because it doesn't look like the Sounds of Freedom movie doesn't mean it didn't happen. Hey, strange mamas, are you waking up every morning feeling that pain in your heart? Like your heart is on the outside of your body. It just feels so raw with a lump in your throat. Is your stomach all riled up? Are you having a hard time focusing throughout the day because you're still maybe beating yourself up? Or walking around feeling ashamed that your child just completely cut you off and you don't really understand why. You're not sure you're ever going to talk to them again. I have a free gift for you. My free morning meditation will help you get into a state of gratitude. That's right. I said gratitude even during the storm. When we can actually praise Jesus during the storm, that is everything. It's easy to have gratitude when everything's going great, but to have gratitude during the storm can change your brain chemistry because your brain can't focus on positive and negative at the same time. It will also help you decide how you want to feel every day, no matter what's going on in your life, no matter what your child is doing or not doing. You get to decide how you feel. Click the link below and I will help you get into a state of peace and calm and clarity every single day so that you have clarity and you know the next steps that you need to take in your life for you and for your child. You are worth it. So this is the thing. You got to ask these two questions. If someone is claiming to be trauma informed, right, you're going to hire them as a therapist, coach, or go into their program, whatever, or even your church, your pastor, you got to ask them, okay, if you're truly trauma informed, what shapes your policies, practices, procedures, handbook? Because if their answer isn't lived experience, they're not trauma informed. They're not. If survivor voices aren't part of creating the things that are meant to help them, the tools that are meant to help them, then they are not trauma informed. Okay? All right. The third way you know if a program or a person, a professional, is trauma informed is if they build trust, not walls. Okay, here's another. It's sad to me that I have all of these quotes. I could just do an episode on quotes that survivor leaders have shared with me. So, this is a quote from a survivor leader. How you respond matters just as much as what happened to us. Your reaction can either build trust or shut us down. She went on to say, and this is really sad, but it's true, survivors aren't spectacles. They are people. I went to a bunco game, which I'd never been to before. And we all put money in at the beginning of the game. And at the end of the game, we decide what organization we're going to give to, what nonprofit. So the woman that was hosting it at her home at the end said, you know what, guys, I bet you if we give this money to an anti-trafficking organization, NAHT, in Nashville, I bet you they will let us talk to the survivors. I bet you we can get the survivors to tell us their stories and hear how they were trafficked and what happened while they were trafficked and how they were rescued or how they escaped. It's like she was foaming at the mouth, just jonesing to hear the Hollywood details of what happened with survivors. A trauma-informed organization will protect their survivors at all costs. They will never, ever ask you as a survivor to share your story with anyone or any part of your story, or even share that you're a survivor. So I want you to keep that in mind. And what that models to me, though, is that as survivor leaders, we have to be respectful whether we are in private or public, because as my story shows, you never know who's in the room. Because that woman that was jonesing to hear a survivor story had no clue that a survivor, me, was standing right there in her living room as she was foaming at the mouth, jonesing to hear all the gory Hollywood details of survivor stories. Which actually, I should have just given her a copy of my book. In hindsight, maybe I'll send it to her. Here, you can buy my book, and that will, and she'll be like, "What? That's not trafficking." Okay, just to recap, how do you know if someone claiming to be trauma informed is actually giving trauma informed care? 3 things. They believe the survivor, they don't blame the survivor. They differentiate, not generalize, meaning they understand that every survivor story is different, and they build trust, not walls. And for those of you listening, those of you coaches and therapists, pastors, programs, I promise you, survivors can tell the difference. They know when their voice is being amplified. They know by how the staff is treating them. They know by the policies, procedures, all of the handbooks. They can tell. I promise you, they know the difference. So when we amplify survivors' voices, not just in theory, but in practice, we can begin to restore what trauma, trafficking, exploitation, abuse tried to steal. Safety, dignity, agency, voice, and hope. If we can actually be survivor-centered, which means trauma-informed care, we can change lives. Remember, you are worth it.